All right. Hey, welcome to the Financial Advantage podcast, powered by the Wells Funding Group. Super excited to have Jim Owen with us today. Jim is a realtor in the Fort Wayne area, and always love to catch up with high producers, learn what they're doing, secrets to their success, and get their take on the market. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
No, I appreciate it. It's always good to be with you and catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you get into the real estate business?
It was kind of a fluke. I had been working with in real estate with a financial group that's based out of Indiana. So I was doing a lot of traveling, and I was interacting with their realtors in the business, and I just thought to myself, I was like, well, I said, they're not doing nearly the amount of traveling I am. They're more in control of their schedule, and they're not reporting to anybody. Maybe I need to, kind of switch gears and be more directly involved. So even though I've been in the industry for many years, I I only passed my realtor exam probably 5 or 6 years ago, and my neighbor at the time called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, you know, uh, I just passed my realtor exam, so if you're thinking of buying, building, or selling, I'd love to represent you." And I said, "Well, I said, as a matter of fact, I said I just passed my exam. I said, so I'm looking for a brokerage." So I just kind of showed up at Century 21, and it's been a fantastic experience ever since.
Awesome. It's crazy how that things happen. One door leads to another, and next thing you know, here you are with all of this. So,
Absolutely.
um, yeah. Um, so you like having more control over your schedule and not traveling as much.
Yeah, and that was really the key, was the not traveling, as I would be gone for weeks or even a couple months at a time towards the end there, and this kind of coincided with my granddaughter being on the way, who you met and I wanted to be at home more for her. So yeah, it was kind of one of those things where the opportunity presented itself, and we got involved. The right doors opened, and yeah, so completely in charge of my schedule, with the exception of I am a very driven agent, so I try to put my clients first. And sometimes that means making sacrifices, with my personal schedule. And other times, if it's something that's important with what's going on in our personal schedule, I've developed enough relationships and a big enough team that, we're able to take care of the clients and not sacrifice, what's important in our personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is all about that balance. How many people do you have on your team right now?
Right now, just my wife and I, but we are
Okay.
part of a team that has 16 people on it. So we're kind of a team within a team.
Okay.
So we lean on that bigger team to get things done and to cover us. And it's a really good situation that we have. And I always find it interesting when other brokerages are always trying to recruit agents. They'll come to me and they'll say, "Well, we've got this, and this." I'm like, "Well, uh, when you get to the point where you can compete against what I got, let's have a conversation." But I'm also someone who is very loyal. I don't like hopping around like some agents do. So I've been very happy at Century 21 since I've been there, and unless something drastically changes, I will probably end up retiring from that brokerage.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about the market out in Fort Wayne. How is real estate there?
Good. It has slowed some, but I have a lot of clients that read the headline national media puts out, and I just have to tell them that all real estate is local,
Hmm.
and they can't get caught up in what they're hearing about, what's happening on the two coasts, or Florida's, having some significant problems right now with moving their listings. But our inventory is up. During the pandemic, we were at a I don't want to call it a record low, but significantly lower inventory, with being around 250 to 350 homes in the Fort Wayne area on an ongoing basis, which really made it a tough market. And we had buyers that were offering $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over list price for $250,000 home. They were waiving inspections, and basically just giving sellers everything except for their firstborn. And so it was tough for buyers. And it certainly pushed home values up here in Fort Wayne. So now you fast forward to 2024, inventory is up. We're sitting around 700 homes on the market, but we're still 50% where we need to be for it to be what we would consider to be a balanced market. For a city the size of Fort Wayne, we need roughly 1,500 houses on the market on a daily basis for things to be balanced. And we're getting there, but it's certainly still a seller's market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And sounds like you're seeing houses that are priced right, moving fairly quickly.
Yes, particularly in that $300,000 range and down. Those are the ones that are still seeing multiple offers and selling very quickly. Once you get above 300,000, whether it's through the time of the year, because we are experiencing a little bit of a slowdown right now because of back to school, with the exception of the people that are trying to get moved because it's back to school, which I think goes minority. But at any rate, I think part of it's just the price range. I think people are a little bit more diligent in that price range because they tend to be a little bit older, or second time home buyers, and it's just different price points, so it's a different client. So we're not getting the multiple offers in that price range, and in some cases the mindset from sellers has not caught up with reality. Sellers are still in that mindset from a couple of years ago, where they think they can just put a sign in the yard, price the home where they want it, and it's going to sell. So I think on the seller side, I think there's still some catching up that needs to happen with what the reality of the market is.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So what is the favorite thing for you about being in real estate?
Definitely the relationship building.
Yeah.
Because I was in a different side of real estate for so long. So I've been in the business for 20 plus years, agent for 5 or 6. I really had came at it with customer service first mindset, and the other piece of that is I've said from day one that real estate is less about the transaction or buying and selling the house than it is about building relationships. Because when you're doing a transaction, whether it's $150,000 or 1.5 million, the client still has to have a level of trust in you to make sure that you're doing the right things for them and that you're looking out for their best interests. So I would really say that for me personally, and I think just as a whole, building the relationship as you're kind of moving through the process, whether it's a buyer or a seller, really helps with solidify you as the local expert from both a knowledge standpoint, but also an integrity standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And because at the end of the day, it's about trust, where because purchasing a home is generally the biggest purchase that someone has made in their life, and it's the biggest financial commitment that most people have made in their lives. You need that person that you can trust to get good advice, and make sure that that you feel comfortable making that decision.
Absolutely. And, that's a big part of our business and our business model is, repeat business and referrals. And, when you're, new to the business, you're relying on, company generated leads and things of that nature. But, with, having, other business relationships before I switched to being an agent, as well as just, giving a, high level of customer service, we were able to, in a very short period of time, switch most of our clients from, lead based to referral based. And I think that's a big part of the reason why, we continue to have success.
Mhm. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of the news about the changes in the National Association of Realtors. I think, personally, I think it's a great opportunity for realtors to be able to communicate their value to a client. What are some things that you are doing now to, help your clients understand the value of working with a professional realtor?
Um, I was an early adopter because, for our MLS, it just, the compensation piece just came out of our local MLS on Monday. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, and the deadline for the National Association of Realtors is August 17th. So there's, different MLSs across the country that are, implementing anytime between July 1st when the law went into effect here in Indiana and, August 17th, which is the national date. So certainly there's a little bit of patchwork when it comes to what's happening state by state, but you're right. At the end of the day, it's a national change, and I started doing, the buyer agency agreements about 90 days ago. Basically, as soon as we had, well, number one, here in Indiana, the form has been available since 1992.
Hmm.
Okay, so had this form for over 30 years. We've always talked about utilizing it, but from a customer service standpoint, I've always said, well, I really don't need the agreement because my clients just don't generally leave me because I'm going to give them great customer service. No, you can't achieve 100%, but we don't lose very many clients, so I just never felt like I needed an agreement. So basically, I was an early adopter. So the past 90 days, while everybody else was fighting the change and not wanting to, learn the form and kind of, get the ins and outs done to how that they were going to roll this out in their personal business, I've already done it.
Hmm.
So, given me kind of a step up. And basically, I just have a couple, simple points that, I talk to my clients about. Number one, it's opening up a dialogue, prior to, sometimes going to see that first house. And basically what I tell them is, hey, you know, uh, we now have to have a buyer's agency agreement, in place before we can show you homes. And the reason why is because it's been a form that's been around for 30 plus years, but now the state's requiring that you have, representation documented. Just like if we were doing a listing on your home, you would have to have representation documented, when you list your home. So
Hmm.
if you're going to representation when you list your home, why wouldn't you want it when you buy a home? You know,
Hmm.
so that's number one. And then number two, um, a lot of agents are requiring a retainer fee. We don't. Um, Although we are required to have the agreement, I'm still a big fan of, high level of customer service. So I don't feel like we need to require that retainer that's available on the form. Um, Third, it does a better job of explaining our fiduciary responsibility to the client. It talks
Hmm.
about it talks about dual agency, all that kind of stuff. So we don't take the deep dive, but we just say, hey, this just does a great job of explaining what we're responsible for, our fiduciary responsibility to you, and how we're going to work on this transaction. And the last point I make, and I'm taking a little bit deeper dive, with you than we do normally with the agent when we're or the client when we're in front of them, is I tell them 99% of the time, it doesn't change how the commission structure, happens with the transaction. Yes, we're going to, still, charge our 3%, and it's always negotiable, depending on the situation with our buyer or seller. Um, we're always going to try to get the seller to cover all, if not most, of our buyer's commission,
Mhm.
and it's always negotiable. And then three, um, when that can't happen, the buyer's still, able to negotiate their commission with me, going forward if we fail to do our job and get the seller to cover, our commissions. So it really doesn't
Mhm.
change anything. And, in all the transactions we've had since we've started using the form, and again, I was an early adopter, I've only had one situation, and I happened to be the listing agent where the seller didn't want to offer a buyer's agent commission. Most
Mhm.
of them continue to offer a commission so that they get more eyes on their house,
Mhm.
um, so that they get it sold faster. So yeah, it's a few bullet points, and I was a little lengthy in my explanation, but when we're in front of the client, it's a pretty quick conversation, and I think everybody's getting pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, to me, I would never buy or sell real estate without a realtor, because even though I'm on the lending side, and I know some things, about how that works. I don't know all the ins and outs, and I don't know, there's people get sued every day over real estate, and why would you go into that kind of like you're saying, the most expensive purchase you're going to make probably in your life, the biggest financial commitment in your life, and you're not going to have professional representation. And a big chunk of what a great realtor does is negotiate on your behalf. It's like if they're going to negotiate on your behalf, they're going to be able to negotiate in what they're going to get paid. So it seems like not really as big of a thing once people really kind of get their heads around what's really at stake. And you know the other thing is kind of like, well, if you were going to have open heart surgery, would you want to have open heart surgery with a doctor who just got out of medical school, or would you want the guy that is 3 weeks away from retiring and has done tens of thousands of procedures? And it's like, yeah, the guy with experience is probably going to be a little more expensive. um,
Hmm.
but but you realize how important that is. Or if someone's going through a divorce, they're never saying, give me the cheapest divorce attorney you can get. um, and so I look at it that way. It's like, understanding the value of the professional realtor in the in the process, and how they protect you, and actually can in many save you money, but a lot of times make you money on with their advice.
Well, absolutely, and I think all of that is important and accurate. And I think one of the other big pieces to having a professional real estate agent representing you, whether you're buying or selling, is the intangibles. Which number one is making your transaction as stress free as possible.
Hmm.
I had a closing yesterday where the buyer just couldn't believe um, the level of communication we had, and
Hmm.
really just no bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Everything super smooth, and and part of that comes with we had a professional realtor on the other side of the transaction, and it always helps. He and I had worked together previously, so yeah, I mean, from the initial offer to the counter offer to the inspection, the repairs, following up on it, checking out escrow, and I mean, as in both of our industries, you can go on and on and on about all
Hmm.
the details that we do respectively for our clients in the industry that largely goes unnoticed because a lot of it happens behind the scenes. But when we got to closing yesterday, and everybody's just happy, and it was a great transaction and very smooth. That's when I think buyers and sellers have a real appreciation for having a professional realtor in their corner.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Where do you see the direction of real estate going in the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, short term, I don't think that we've seen the end of um, some of the litigation surrounding commissions. There's a lot of, there's a settlement in place, and Indiana has been ahead of the curve to be compliant with the settlement. But to date, it hasn't been approved by the Department of Justice. And there's some MLSs, particularly on the West Coast, which is a little surprising, that are pushing back. I think it's still going to be, I think the next year or two, even though I think things are going to settle down here in Indiana, I think nationally, I think we're still going to have a conversation about commissions and how, it should work, for the industry. And part of the problem is, this lawsuit and this agreement with the Department of Justice is probably, and I don't have any facts, just my opinion, probably one of the biggest um, impacts on an industry as a whole that we've probably ever seen,
Hmm.
because it affect real estate agents and brokerages. As you know, it's affected lending institutions with what we can and can't do with commissions. With the VA coming out and making some adjustments to what can and can't be done with a VA loan, because of what was previously allowed and not allowed, for seller concessions. So I think we're still, a year or two away from the industry kind of, getting past this commission thing. But long term, I think it's going to be better for consumers, in the fact that I think that it's going to be a more transparent process.
Hmm.
The other part about it is, from a buyer standpoint, particularly a first time buyer standpoint, I think that unfortunately there's going to be a number of first time or younger buyers that are going to get priced out of the market for homes that they otherwise would have wanted and qualified for, because a seller is not willing to pay a buyer broker commission, in order to get a deal done for that type of client. So it wasn't great. I think that the lawsuit itself was settled improperly, because largely, there's never been any collusion on commissions. It's always been a negotiable thing for you know as long as I can remember. So even though I think the reasoning is faulty, I think that the end result will be better for seasoned agents. But I do think we're going to have some attrition over the next few years with agents that can't articulate it,
Hmm.
and and just can't kind of make their value proposition going forward. So short term, I think there's still going to be some ups and downs, but I think once we get to the 3 to 5 year mark, I think it'll be business as usual. And at that point, particularly here in Fort Wayne, I still think we're going to be a little bit of a seller's market,
Hmm.
uh, because we still have low inventory, and I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's going to continue to move closer for the buyer. But every builder that I talk to here in Northeast Indiana says it's going to be several years before we can build ourselves out of this housing deficit.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. And I know that depending on who you listen to, they're talking anywhere from potentially still three more rate cuts for the Federal Reserve this year. I'm probably not on the three level. I might be at the 1 or 2 level. But assuming that the interest rates start to come down sometime end of this year, first part of next year, what do you anticipate that doing to the housing market in general and in Fort Wayne in particular?
Well, I think it's going to, it's kind of one of those things that's kind of bittersweet. Because like you, even though I'm not a loan officer, I monitor what happens in your business because it affects both of our clients. Um, and yeah, I think it's bittersweet because on the one hand, a bunch of buyers that have been priced out of the market, because of higher interest rates, are going to be able to afford to get back in where they were, say a year or two ago, because the payment's going to be a little bit more affordable to them. But when that happens for one person, it happens for everybody. So yeah, so when rates go down, and I'm with you, I don't think we're going to see 3 rate cuts this year. Uh, I think it's going to be one, possibly two, and I think part of the problem is the Fed's got to stop projecting what it's going to do. you
Hmm.
know,
Right, right.
it's kind of one of those things. It's the self fulfilling prophecy. They go, well,
Yeah.
we're going unless this happens, and then something else happens and they don't do it. So I think it's kind of ironic. But getting off my soapbox on that, yeah, when the rates come down for one, they're going to come down for all. So we're already seeing a fairly active market right now, although we're a little slow because of the time of year. But yeah, if
Hmm.
we by the time we get two or three rate cuts, whether it's the end of this year, the first of next year, yeah, I think buyers are going to flood back into the market, and it's not going to be like it was, when we were at 3 or 4%. But yeah, if we get back to right around 6%, I think it's going to be a pretty healthy market, as for buyers and sellers, and I think you're
Hmm.
going to go back to seeing, some of those mid-range houses in the $300,000 to $500,000 range start to fly off the market a little bit faster.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the, I'll get your thoughts on this. I think that there's a significant amount of people that, for one reason or another, feel like they're trapped in a house they don't particularly like because they like that interest rate. And I'm kind of with you. If we can get, we're not, I don't think we're ever going to get down to twos and threes again, which we don't need to, because there's, a lot of other things that go along with that. But if we're getting down somewhere in the sixes, high five, low six, high five, do you see people starting to turn loose of some of those houses to get something that they really want? Do you think that would be a big enough mover for them to do that?
Yeah, I do. Because that's been, I hate to say talking point, but that's been kind of um, my theme for the last, 2 years, ever since rates, started climbing, was that, the rates that we saw around 2, 3, and 4% were an anomaly because of the pandemic. Um, they're I mean, historically ridiculously low. I don't know what the number is, but if you look back 30 or 40 years, I think the average for interest rates was still in the either in the low double digits or high nines.
Hmm.
So still it's 7%. We're still historically low. Compared to our parents' generation that had mortgages in the 16, 17% range. So so money is still pretty affordable even at these rates. But yeah, I think that um, you know barring anything else happening with inflation or the economy as far as the job slowing down. Yeah, I think that buyers in general or sellers um, that feel like they're stuck are absolutely going to jump if they can get a 5, 5.5, or maybe a 6% rate on a house that is better for them. And some of
Hmm.
it is even that they feel stuck. I've got a client that I'm working with right now that we're kind of in the middle of some counter offers and stuff. They're one of these people has a super low rate, but they need to move out of necessity.
Right.
So the motivated buyer because of necessity hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away. That piece is always going to be present in the industry. But yeah, I mean, some of these other people that to your point, just have not wanted to budge, even though it's a house that they don't necessarily like, or it's not necessarily their forever home. Yeah, I think if we get a break on rates, I think absolutely they're going to enter the market, and they're going to be part of those buyers that are flooding it, that are just going to make competition for homes
Hmm.
I don't want to say skyrocket, but significantly kind of increase back to where we were a couple of years ago.
Hmm. Right. Right. And getting back to, I think a lot of times, when the government tries to get involved in any kind of industry, and obviously there's, we want our food to be safe. There, we want, our our water to be safe and all these things. So I'm not saying like never have any government control, but or oversight or whatever. But that when they get in, they think they're doing one thing and they end up doing something different. And what I see a lot with this is a bigger impact, like you're talking about, on those first time home buyers, on veterans, on people that maybe have limited um, you know, they don't have equity coming off of the sale of a house a lot of times to pay down payment and closing costs and commissions and those kinds of things. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, and hopefully most sellers like you're talking about will recognize that you know part of what you're paying for is advertising. and how many people do you want to see your product?
Absolutely. And I was doing some number crunching uh a couple days ago, because I've got one seller that's got a especially challenging house to sell, because of some stuff that's going on in the neighborhood, um from a city of Fort Wayne standpoint, not anything else. But um so we were kind of discussing what the trends were and things like that. And one of the things I pointed out was, as frustrated as they are, they've only been on the market for 3 weeks,
Hmm.
in a challenging home. And this is just part of the mindset that, they felt like that if it didn't sell the first couple days, that there was something wrong. And I said,
Hmm.
no. And, we ran a report and I passed it along to my clients. And, it's just, houses that, like we said, if they're not priced exactly right, or, maybe that there's, something undesirable about the property. In this particular case, the city of Fort Wayne wanting to do some sewer improvements that unfortunately is going to have some cost to the homeowner, or whatever it is. Those houses are sitting. And, I was in a house just 2 days ago that is nothing wrong with it. I think it's priced right. It's a gorgeous house. It's just shy of $400,000. It's been on the market for 22 days.
Hmm.
So sometimes it's just it's location. It's what type of house is it? The yard. So there's, I mean, as you know, there's just tons of stuff that goes into it. So yeah, I think overall, I think the government, getting back to the what kind of spurred this part of the conversation. They make decisions on stuff that they, quite frankly, just don't have a clue how the industry runs. And that's
Hmm.
a bit of regulation in general, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level, is they're making decisions on industries that they don't know how they operate, or what the
Right.
impact's going to be. And I think that's part of the situation with this particular lawsuit. Is I don't think that anybody that's been a law involved with the decision on the settlement, to fix the problem when there wasn't one, um, is the unintended consequences, which happens with a lot of regulations. And that is the first time home buyer, or the buyer that's has a high debt to income ratio, so they did pay down some stuff, where they don't have cash reserves, or I mean, you name it. I mean, you and I could go on forever between the two of us. But yeah, that's the buyer that's going to be hurt by this particular government regulation. And like I said, I think it's going to continue to shake out a little bit over the next couple of years, because one thing that's always a constant is any lawsuit that winds its way through the court system takes forever.
Hmm.
So I would hope that we would have some resolution on that sooner rather than later. But I'm grateful that we live in a state. Indiana has been ahead of the curve, so we may not
Hmm.
like what they've done in order to get ahead of it, but at least it's given us some narrow guidelines to how we're going to deal with it. Um, from this, from July 1st moving forward. And, hopefully we don't have to tweak it, a whole lot more. And it's just going to be, how we do business, for a long time to come.
Absolutely. And I think it gets back to, you're talking about transparency. I think that, I mean, because I look back at, you know, changes in the mortgage industry after the crash,
Yep.
and, there was a lot more transparency that happened, which was needed. And, and I mean, because just like, vast majority of loan officers, even back then, were doing a great job, and so the few, um, you know, that weren't, kind of cast problems on everybody. But, that being said, the transparency was great, and I think it has helped our industry a tremendous amount. And I think that, you know, having the consumer be more educated on what all is involved with the real estate transaction, what it is the realtor is doing for you. It's more than, 180, you know, paper pushing activities. It's negotiating, it's understanding, the market. It is, giving, making sure that, you're not, stepping on a landmine in, in a particular transaction, almost like, I have car insurance, I have homeowners insurance, because what if something happened, And it's like, when you're working with a professional realtor, you have that confidence that, you know, maybe I've bought or sold 4 or 5 houses in my lifetime. Good realtors help people buy or sell 5 houses in the last month, maybe in the last 2 weeks or something, And so, that's just important, getting people to understand more. It's not just about showing a house. There's way more that's involved in it.
So that's exactly right. And when I was looking at some of the numbers, uh, our numbers get like a lot of industries. Our numbers don't really reflect nationally what realtors do for buyers and sellers. Because if you look at the average realtor only does 12 transactions per year.
Hmm.
And I will tell you, as father of 4 kids, and and we have a grandchild, selling 12 houses a year is not going to keep you in business.
Right.
But as in some industries, we have a lot of part-time real estate agents that are only interested in selling 1 or 2 houses per year. So when you're looking at the national averages, you really need to find real estate agents that have that experience, because it is more than just unlocking a door and showing houses. There's a lot of stuff that goes behind it. Experience is critical in this industry, and we uh, we kind of show our value with our clients that we're having discussions, because they recognize that we've been in these situations before. Something may come up in their transaction that we've dealt with before. And I've dealt with a lot of stuff. One of my favorite stories is I had a listing a few years ago where I sold it, and there was a 900-pound potbelly pig in the living room. But we still got it sold. So I
Wow.
mean, yeah, I mean, it's and it's kind of funny now, but it was a challenge, but we got it done. We got it done pretty quick. So yeah, I mean, every time that you think you've seen it all, then something pops up, but you can still rely on that experience. Even if you haven't seen it, you know what the process is to get over anything that's going to be thrown in front of you. And one of the most common objections I get from people is, and it doesn't happen often, but this is, like I said, this is probably the most common. Well, why should I retain you when I can get an attorney, to do the paperwork? And I said, well, because when we're representing you, we're not charging you our commission for doing the paperwork. Yeah, that's a part of it, but your attorney is not going to show up at 7 o'clock at night and show you a house and point out what's good, bad, or indifferent from a market standpoint. They're not going to leave their office to attend the inspection. They're not going to leave their office to attend the appraisal. They're
Hmm.
not they're not going to leave their office. So I mean, if you want to deal with them, you're going to their office. You're going there from 9 to 5, and you're not getting any service outside of office hours. And they're not going to be what I say is, well, I'm in the field today, because I'm either showing houses, I'm at inspections, I'm following up on appraisals, whatever. And they're also not going to do any legwork for you.
Hmm.
All the vendors that we use, from inspections to septic inspection, well inspection, contractors, builders, I mean, you name it, all the connections that we have in the industry, the attorney's not going to do all that legwork. He's going to tell you, hey, this needs to be done, and let me know what the resolution is. Um, so um, so yeah, so I mean, I think that more and more, I think our value proposition is getting out there, and I think more and more people are realizing what we do, because it's not about how much we make per hour, because although we make it professionals, we make a good living. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and
Hmm.
I could stay on a podcast for another hour and list 100 ways that we contribute to the value proposition in the real estate market.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Cause it's, and, you know, it's the value that you bring to the hour, and that, you're helping people, make money or realize money that they have gained over appreciation, or you're saving people money on, again, on the biggest purchase for most people of their entire life. And and there's a tremendous amount of value that really, the compensation compared to the value, you're giving way more value than what you're being compensated for.
Oh, absolutely. And there's there's all sorts of numbers out there, and I'm not going to play with numbers, but just about every real estate website, says that, when you list with a realtor versus, a for sale by owner, that, the house, sells faster and, for a percentage more than, than if you do it yourself. And all of that's true.
Hmm.
And, like we've illustrated, in the last, 45 minutes or so, the other value propositions that go into having professional representation. So I think that the overwhelming majority of people understand the need for professional representation with a real estate transaction. And like I said, I think most people understand that. Not only are you going to save money when you have professional representation, but you're probably going to make more money on your transaction as well. So yeah, I think we just need to do a better job as an industry on expressing what we do and what our value is. And I think it's less about the dollar amount than it is about the process,
Hmm.
the service experience, and the relationship. I interesting story, and this didn't happen to me, but I use it now. Somebody in my office was on a listing presentation, probably a couple of years ago, and was discussing what the commission was going to be, and he says, well, he goes, I charge 6%. He goes, I retain 3% for myself, and then we're going to offer a 3% buyer's agent commission to encourage somebody to bring a buyer to your transaction. And the seller said, well, I spoke to another realtor that's willing to only take 5%. And Chris said, well, he goes, you may have somebody willing to take 5, but I have sellers that are willing to pay me 7. And
Yep.
he said, and the reason why is because you get what you pay for.
Yep.
When you have willing to take 5%, it's for themselves and for the other side of the commission. Yeah, it's a monetary savings for the seller, but what are they giving up by not using an agent that knows what their worth is, and
Hmm.
you're not going to kind of become that discount broker, so to speak. And there's always situations, commissions are always negotiable. We've been saying that for 30 years. And there are situations, where, it's appropriate to take, a smaller commission because of, circumstances. But there's also times, and I've had this, in a couple of cases recently where, I've got a listing appointment. I've said, well, this is going to take, this much extra work because of this, and this. So, my commission is going to be, 7%, and, we're going to offer 3% to the buyer's agent. And, when that level of extra work is required,
Hmm.
that client was like, well, absolutely. We understand the challenges and what what the extra work is that you're going to have to do. And so, yeah, so, I mean, yeah, it's always negotiable. And I think in the end, when you have a professional agent that's working with, a motivated buyer or seller, I think there's going to be very few times where you're not going to come to an agreement on commissions that's not fair to everybody.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jim, thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. This has been enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely. It's always good to catch up with you, and having the ability to spend some extended time kind of discussing the industry was, yeah, was definitely an eye opener for, me, just to kind of reiterate some of the stuff that, we talk about all the time, but sometimes uh, don't kind of revisit the what's going on in the industry. So appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Um, well, probably the best way is just my direct line, which is my cell phone at 260-348-4500. Or they can reach out to Owen Real Estate Group FW.com. That stands for Owen Real Estate Group Fort Wayne. And there's a contact information. There's also tons and tons of resources on there, both from houses that are available, and just tons of stuff about Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. It's just a real wealth of information for somebody that's either looking to buy or sell, or just looking to see what's going on in the Fort Wayne area.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Jim. This Dennis Wells Financial Advantage podcast, powered by the Wells Funding Group. You can call the team and I direct 219-230-8400. Thanks again, Jim, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.